The day it all broke started like any other Tuesday. Gray sky over the city, drizzle on the window, the hum of traffic 3 floors below our apartment. I remember the smell of stale coffee and the cartoon voices drifting from the living room, where the kids were arguing over something that would not matter by nightfall. My name does not matter as much as the roles I used to own. Husband, dad, provider. Those words felt solid once, like the brick walls of our building, like the oak dining table I assembled on a Sunday afternoon while my wife Emma laughed at the instructions spread across the floor. Lately, though, the table had started to feel too big. Too many empty inches between us at her plate, my plate, 3 smaller plates lined between like neutral territory. The distance began. No slammed doors, no shouting matches. Just absence. She started eating later, claiming late meetings, traffic. A new client who kept changing their mind. I stopped asking questions because every question seemed to float between us and fall to the floor. The kids noticed before I let myself notice. Is Mom working again tonight? Our oldest. Lily would ask, stabbing her fork into overcooked pasta. Just this week, I'd lie, forcing a smile. I told myself this was what life looked like when 2 adults were tired and trying. That marriages had seasons. That distance was just the price of survival in a city that never really slept. But there were other things. Her phone, always face down now. The way she tilted the screen away, laughing at something, then catching herself and slipping it into her pocket. New clothes she did not show me. Perfume that smelled like someone else's idea of Emma. I remember the first time I heard her laugh in the hallway. Not the laugh she had with the kids. Not the tired laugh she gave me when I tried a bad joke at midnight. This was bright and unguarded, the sound she used to make when we were still new. I stepped out of the bedroom, wiping my hands on a dish towel, and found her leaning against the wall, whispering into her phone like a... She saw me and straightened. Work, she said, the word dropping between us like a stone. I nodded. Of course, work. The first real crack opened on a rain-heavy evening. The kids were with my sister for an overnight, a rare break we had planned weeks in. I imagined it differently. A movie takeout, maybe that conversation we kept postponing. Instead, she walked in late, soaked from the rain, hair plastered to her cheeks, mascara smudged just enough that I could not tell if she had been crying. You didn't call, I said, keeping my voice steady. She shrugged off her coat, hung it carefully by the door, avoiding my eyes. I told you. Client emergency. You said you'd be home by 7. It's nearly 10 m. The room felt smaller, the air. The single light above the table cast long shadows over the chairs. 3 empty ones. She sighed, finally looking at me. What do you want me to say? I wanted to say, I want you to be here. I want you to look at me like you used to. I want this ache in my chest to be something other than fear. Instead, I said nothing. It's fine. We moved around each other in the kitchen, 2 strangers sharing the same soundtrack of dripping rain and humming appliances. She reheated leftovers. I stacked dishes we never used into a cupboard that already felt like a museum of our old life. The discovery itself was not dramatic. No lipstick on a collar. No mysterious hotel receipt. Just a notification. One of those tiny banners that appear at the top of a phone screen when someone forgets to turn them off. She had left her phone on the dining table to grab laundry from the dryer. I was wiping crumbs from the surface when it lit up. Unknown numbers. They'll never know, I promise, I love you. 3 sentences. They rearranged my entire life. I stared at the screen, the glow reflecting off the polished wood, the words burning through layers of denial I had carefully built. My heart did not race. It slowed. Footsteps approached. The dryer door clanged shut. I could have put the phone down. I could have pretended again that I had seen nothing. Instead, my thumb shook as it slid up, unlocking the screen. Messages spilled out. Weeks of them. Months. Nicknames I had never heard her use. Plans for weekends that matched the ones she had told me were team retreats. Laughing emojis sent at midnight while I lay inches away from her in the dark. When she walked back into the room, carrying a basket of warm clothes, she saw the phone in my hand. She froze. For a moment, there was no sound. Just rain against the window, distant traffic, the slow drip of the leaky faucet. "Who is he?" I asked. She did not deny it. Instead, something in her shoulders collapsed, like she had been holding up a ceiling only she could see. It's complicated," she whispered. Complicated. The word felt obscene. "The kids," I said, my voice sounding far away. "Do they know?" She shook her head quickly. "No, of course not. They don't know anything." Lily's laughter from earlier echoed in my mind. The way our younger son, Max, had drawn a picture of us last week, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. "How long?" I managed. Her eyes glossed over. "But no tears." "A year," she said. 12 months of my life, refiled under a category I had never agreed. Something inside me went very. I heard my own breathing, the clock ticking in the hallway, the soft hum of the... "They're not yours," she added suddenly, the words tumbling out like she was trying to outrun them. It took a moment for my brain to catch up. "What?" "The kids," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "None of them are yours." The room tilted, but my body did not move. I stared at her, at the woman I had loved for nearly a decade, at the person who had held my hand in hospital rooms and laughed with me on cramped couches. "You're lying," I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked, and something like pity flickered across her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I can't keep pretending." Rain streaked down the glass behind her, distorting the city lights into blurred rivers of. Somewhere above us, a neighbor dragged a chair across the floor. My hands found the back of a dining chair, knuckles whitening as I gripped it. Images flashed. Lily's first steps toward me, Max's sleepy head on my shoulder, the baby's tiny fingers wrapping around mine. "Not mine, not mine's. Not mine's." The chair creaked under my weight as if it, too, could not carry. I did not shout. I did not throw anything. The silence felt sharper than any broken plate. "Who is he?" I asked again, my voice almost calm. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally answered. And with his name, the last piece of my old life loosened its grip and fell away, leaving me standing in a quiet, collapsing room, listening to the rain as everything I thought I knew dissolved into a single, unbearable question I could not yet bring myself to say out loud. Sleep stopped coming after that night. When it did, it arrived in thin, broken pieces, 20 minutes here, half an hour there, never enough to feel like rest, always enough to dream. In those dreams, the apartment was full of echoes. Small feet on hardwood floors, little voices calling Dad, the sound of a baby's laugh, and then every time Emma's voice cutting through. "They're not yours." His name was Daniel. He worked at her firm. I had met him once, at a holiday party I did not want to attend. He shook my hand, smiled too easily, called me man instead of my name. I remembered thinking he seemed harmless. That was before I knew he had been living in the negative space of my marriage, in all the unanswered texts and late-night emails. After the confession, she moved into the spare room. I stayed in what used to be our bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above. The bed felt enormous and wrong. There were tests. Of course. DNA kits ordered in an anonymous-looking brown box, clinical instructions that felt obscene in their gentleness. I followed every step carefully, like precision could protect me from what I already knew. Weeks later, the results arrived. The email lit up my phone while I was on the subway, sandwiched between strangers in the morning rush. My hands trembled as I scrolled through words and numbers that confirmed what her mouth had already told me. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. 3 times 3 children. 3 zeros. The train rattled through a tunnel, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. No one noticed the man in the corner seat, silently losing his entire identity. At home, the kids still called me Dad. They still ran to the door when I came in from work, still climbed onto my lap to show me crayon drawings and school certificates with gold stickers. I tried to hold onto that, tried to tell myself that fatherhood was more than blood and paperwork. But every time Max looked up at me with eyes that were not mine, every time I saw Daniel's features in the curve of a cheek or the shape of a smile, something inside me flinched. Emma and I spoke in logistics now. School schedules, groceries, bills. Her voice was careful, controlled, like every sentence had to pass through a filter before it reached me. One night after the kids had finally fallen asleep, she knocked on the open door of the living room. The TV murmured low. Some show I was not really watching. "Can we talk?" she asked. I muted the TV. "About what?" "About all of this." She gestured vaguely, as if the problem were just messy furniture. There was a coffee mug on the table between us, the ring of a dried stain circling the bottom. I stared at it instead of her. "You lied to me," I said. "For years." "I know," her voice cracked. "I was scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, finally looking up. "That I'd stop loving them if I knew." Her eyes filled, tears collecting without falling. "I didn't plan it this way," she whispered. "It just happened." One mistake turned into another, and then it felt too late to go back. "You made 3 people," I said quietly. "That's not something that just happens." She flinched. "Did you ever love me?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her shoulders sagged. "Yes," she said. "Maybe not the way you needed. But yes, I did. I do." I thought about the way she had once fallen asleep with her head on my chest, the way she used to steal my hoodies and complain they were too big. I thought about how, somewhere along the way, those small intimacies had been replaced with silence and password protected. And him, I forced myself to ask. She did not answer right away. When she did, it was with her eyes fixed on the dark window. "He made me feel a sign," or she said, like I wasn't just a mom or someone's wife trying to remember who she used to be. The words sliced through me. Because once, that had been my job. Sleepless nights blurred into one another. I would lie on the couch with the TV off, city lights flickering against the walls, listening to the soft creaks of the apartment settling. Sometimes I could hear Emma moving in the spare room, her footsteps quiet, her door opening and closing. Once in the middle of a storm, I found myself standing in the hallway outside that. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I imagined walking in, sitting on the edge of her bed, asking her to tell me everything from the beginning. Instead, I walked into the kids' room. Lily slept with her arm flung across her. Max was twisted in his blanket, breathing. The baby Anna made little sighing sounds in her sleep. I stood there watching them, feeling both love and a strange, hollow distance. I had been there for each of their firsts, first words, first falls, first fevers, but suddenly those memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life. The turning point came in an ordinary moment. I was at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning, laptop open, pretending to work while the kids ate cereal. The smell of coffee drifted from the counter, sunlight filtered through rain-streaked glass, painting pale lines across the floor. "Dad," Lily said, spoon clinking against her bowl. "Yeah." "Are you and Mom mad at each other?" she asked, her voice too careful for an 8-year-old. Max looked up, cereal milk on his chin. Anna banged her spoon against the tray in her high chair. "Oblivious." The word no rose automatically, the lie ready and practiced. But the weight of all the other lies pressed against my chest. "We're figuring things out," I said. "Sometimes grown-ups have to do that." "Are you going to leave?" she asked. Eyes. The room went quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. I thought about leaving all the time now. The fantasy of it came in small flashes. A suitcase by the door, a different apartment with bare walls, mornings without the sound of little feet. In those moments, guilt would flood in immediately after. Heavy and suffocating. How could I even think about walking away from the only people who had ever called me dad? Yet every morning, when I found myself studying their faces for traces of a man I hated, I wondered if staying was its own kind of cruelty. "I don't know," I said finally. Her lower lip trembled. She nodded slowly, as if she had braced for that. That night, after the kids were in bed, Emma and I sat at opposite ends of the couch. The TV was off. Rain ticked against the window, steady and soft. "I talked to a lawyer," I said. Her head snapped toward me. "You what?" "I needed to know my options," I replied. "My rights, or lack of them." She swallowed. And legally they're not mine," I said. "No biological connection, no adoption papers. Nothing." Her face crumpled. That doesn't change what you are to them, she whispered. That's the problem, I said quietly. It changes everything for me. The lawyer had been blunt in their careful, professional way. If I wanted to walk away, I could. I had no legal obligation to pay support, no formal tie to the children, if DNA said. You can start over, they had said, their voice coming through my phone like it was speaking to someone I did not recognize. Start. At nearly 40, with a shattered marriage and 3 children who were both mine and not mine. I don't want to hurt them. I told Emma now. I don't want them to grow up thinking they weren't enough. Then don't go, she pleaded. Stay. We can figure something out. Counseling maybe, co-parenting. Anything. I looked at her, at the woman who had once been my safe place and was now the epicenter of my pain. You made me a stranger in my own life. I said. I don't know how to come back from that. The quiet stretched between us, heavy and dense. Rain blurred the city lights into smeared halos. In that quiet, a new thought slipped in, not loud, not dramatic, just clear. If I stayed, I would slowly drown in what-ifs and almosts. If I left, I would break 3 hearts in my own, but maybe, just maybe, I would stop breaking a little more each day. I did not say it out loud yet. Instead, I sat there, listening to the rain, feeling the first fragile outline of a decision forming in the dim light of our living room. Leaving did not happen in a single dramatic scene. It unfolded quietly, like the reverse of moving in. One drawer emptied. Then, a suit bag over my shoulder, a box of books carried down 3 flights of stairs. The kids were told a softened version. Dad is going to live somewhere else for a while, but he loves you very much. The sentence tasted like ash in my mouth. I found a small, furnished apartment across town. It smelled faintly of paint and someone else's cooking. There were no toys on the floor, no tiny socks stuck in couch cushions, no artwork taped to the fridge. The first night there, I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of a new building. Pipes clanging, doors closing, a television murmuring through the wall. I stared at my phone, the screen filled with photos of the life I had just walked out of. The lawyer had been right. Legally, I owed them nothing. I transferred money. Old habits of responsibility do not vanish overnight. For a while, there were calls. Video chats arranged at scheduled times, the kids' faces crowded around Emma's phone. Hi, Dad, they'd shout, voices overlapping. I tried to keep my own voice light as I asked about school, friends, the shows they were watching. When the calls ended, the silence in my apartment felt violent. Then, gradually, the calls became less. Schedules got complicated. Sorry they're exhausted tonight. Emma would text. We'll try tomorrow. Tomorrow slipped into next week. Next week into soon. I told myself this was the price of the choice I had made. You cannot walk away and expect life to keep inviting you back. Months passed. Seasons changed. The city moved from gray rain to heavy heat and back again. I built a new routine. Wake up, make coffee, stare at the empty chair across the small kitchen table. Go to work, answer emails, pretend the world had not ended less than a year ago. Come home, cook for one, eat in silence. Sometimes on weekends, I would walk through the park near my old neighborhood. Children played on swings, parents sat on benches scrolling through their phones. I would watch them from a distance, feeling both too close and too. It was on one of those quiet Saturdays that she appeared again. I was sitting in a cafe, rain tapping lightly on the windows. The smell of espresso wrapping around the conversations, humming in the background. My hands were wrapped around a warm mug, more for the comfort than the taste. Hey. Her voice slid into the space before I was ready. I looked up. Emma stood there, hair tied back, a coat too thin for the. Her eyes were tired in a way I had not seen before, like the exhaustion had settled somewhere underneath the skin. Can I sit? She asked. I hesitated, then nodded. She slid into the chair across from me, hands wrapped around an invisible cup. The cafe noise seemed to fade, like the room had narrowed to the space between us. You look different, she said. So do you. I replied. We sat there, 2 people who had once shared a bed, and now did not know how to share a table. How are the kids? I asked, because it was the first safe question I could find. Good, she said quickly. Then softer. They miss you. A familiar ache tightened in my chest. You could call more, I said. Her shoulders sank. I know, she admitted. It's just hard. Talking to you, trying to explain why you're not there when they ask. I never know what to say without making you the villain or myself the monster. There it was, the old tension, the pull between her guilt and my anger. You don't have to explain me, I said quietly. Just tell them I love them, even if I'm not there. She blinked quickly, swallowing. We fell into a silence that was not comfortable, but not entirely hostile either. Outside, the rain had lightened to a mist, blurring the outlines of people hurrying past. I left him, she said. The words landed like a dropped glass. Daniel, I asked, though I already knew. She nodded. It wasn't what I thought it would be, she said. I thought I don't know. I thought he was my escape, my second chance. Instead, it was just more lies, more pretending. A bitter part of me wanted to say, now you know. Another part stayed quiet, too tired for revenge. What do you want from me, Emma? I asked. Her fingers twisted together on the table. I don't know, she said honestly. Forgiveness. A chance to do right by you somehow. I know I can't fix what I broke, I know that. But I also know you didn't deserve any of it. Her eyes finally met mine, and for the first time in a long time, there was no defensiveness there, no. Just regret. I'm not coming back, I said gently. I know. She whispered. I'm not asking you to. The quiet between us shifted. It was less sharp now, more like a soft pressure on an old bruise. I thought you hated me, she confessed. I did, I said. Some days I still do. Other days I just miss who we were before all of this. I miss him too, she murmured. Who? The man who built a crib in the middle of the night because I was too impatient to wait until morning, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. The man who made pancakes in the shape of animals, even when they looked nothing like animals. My throat tightened. That man thought he was building something real. I said. He didn't know the floor was already cracked. She flinched, nodding. I'm in therapy, she said after a moment, trying to figure out why I did what I did. Why I broke the one person who never deserved it. That's good, I said. I mean for you. For them too, she added. I don't want to pass this mess on to the kids. I don't want them to grow up thinking this is what love looks like. We both glanced toward the window, where families hurried by under umbrellas. I brought something, she said, reaching into her bag. She slid a small stack of photos across the table. Birthdays I had missed. School plays. The three of them lined up on the couch, a gap where I should have been. I didn't want you to feel like you had to see them, she said quickly. But I also didn't want to erase you from their story. You were there for so much of it. Whether the world recognizes that or not. My fingers hovered over the top photo, then settled around. Lily was missing her front. Max wore a superhero cape. Anna held a stuffed rabbit with a chewed ear. The ache that rose then was different, less sharp than before, but deeper somehow. What do you tell them about me now? I asked, still looking at the picture. That you love them, she said. That sometimes grown-ups break in ways that have nothing to do with their kids. That it isn't their fault, that you leaving was about you and me, not them. And do you believe that? I asked quietly. She swallowed. Some days, she admitted. Other days I just feel the emptiness you left, and know I did that. I made this. We sat there, two people holding pieces of a life that no longer fit. Would you ever want to see them? She asked finally. The question hit me like cold. The answer was complicated, tangled in love and pain and fear. I don't know if I can, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Every time I think about it, I feel like I'm walking back into a house that already burned down. She nodded, eyes shining. I understand, she said. I just needed you to know the door isn't locked. Outside, the rain eased. A thin beam of pale light breaking through the clouds. Inside, we sat in the quiet between guilt and dignity, between love that had twisted into something else and the faint possibility of a different kind of peace. When we finally stood to leave, we walked out into the damp street side by side but not. At the corner, she turned left. I turned right. I walked back to my small apartment, the photos still warm in my hand, the sound of the cafe fading behind me, and somewhere in that gray afternoon, a question began to form, not about what we had been, but about what it might mean to let all of it. Letting go did not arrive with some grand revelation. It seeped in slowly, in the spaces where grief had once lived, like morning light slipping around the edges of blackout curtains. For a long time, my mornings had been heavy. Wake up, remember, hurt. That was the order. Then one day, I woke up and noticed the light first. Soft, pale. Stretching across the ceiling of my small bedroom. The city already humming outside, but inside, there was a stillness that did not feel like emptiness anymore. The chair at the small kitchen table was still empty, but it no longer felt like an Justo. I made coffee, the familiar hiss and drip filling the silence. For months, the smell had been a trigger, pulling me back to weekend mornings in the old apartment, tiny hands reaching for my mug, Emma laughing as she stole sips. Now it was just therapy helped. Sitting in a small room with a stranger who did not flinch when I said, I left them or none of them were mine, or some days I don't know who I am without them calling me dad. We talked about betrayal, about identity, about how much of myself I had poured into roles that were never as secure as I believed. We talked about how walking away had not been a clean cut, but a slow, jagged. Forgiveness doesn't mean contact. My therapist said once, her voice calm. It doesn't mean reunion. It's not a performance for anyone else. It's just putting down a weight you've carried for too long. I thought about that for weeks. I did not forgive Emma all at once. It began in small moments. The first time I saw a couple arguing in the street and did not automatically project our story onto them. The first time I passed a playground and did not feel like someone had pressed fingers into a fresh bruise. I started noticing other things. The way the rain sounded against the window in my new place. Softer somehow, without the echo of raised voices that had never actually been raised. The way the city looked at dawn, buildings outlined in gentle gold instead of harsh gray. Emma and I still texted occasionally. Practicality wrapped in politeness. Report. Doctor's appointments. Photos from school events. I always opened the. At first my chest would tighten, breath catching as I studied their faces. Over time, the tightness eased into something else, a tender ache that did not demand immediate relief. I did not rush to see them. I allowed myself to admit that I was not ready. That forcing contact to soothe guilt would be its own kind of selfishness. One morning, near the end of winter, I woke to a text from Emma. Lily wrote you something, it read. She asked if I could send it. No pressure to respond. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the attached photo. It was a picture of lined notebook. In her careful, uneven handwriting, she had written, Dear Dad, I hope you are okay. I miss your pancakes. Love, Lily. The word dad hit me differently this time. Not as a reminder of what I had lost, but as a reminder of what had actually been real. Biology had not been on my side. But early mornings, scraped knees, bedtime stories, those were mine. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in my hand, morning light spilling across the surface. For a long time, I just breathed. Eventually, I typed back. Hi, Lilies. I hope you're okay, too. I miss your pancakes more. I sent it to Emma, who sent it on to her. The reply did not matter. What mattered was the quiet shift inside me as I hit send. Forgiveness, I realized, was not a single act. It was a series of small. Permission to remember without drowning. Permission to care without returning. Permission to acknowledge love without reopening a life that had already ended. Spring came slowly. Trees outside my building traded bare branches for soft green. The air lost its bite. One Sunday, I walked to the park without realizing where my feet were taking me. The sky was a clean, pale. Children ran across the grass, parents calling after them. I sat on a bench, hands in my pockets, and let the sounds wash over me. Laughter, squeaky swings, the thud of a soccer ball hitting the ground. For the first time since I left, I did not scan the crowd for 3 familiar faces. I just watched. I thought about Emma then, not as the villain of my story, but as a flawed, broken person who had made catastrophic choices out of her own emptiness. I thought about the younger versions of us, the ones who moved into that first apartment full of hope and mismatched furniture. I forgive you, I said softly, the words barely leaving my lips. She was not there to hear it. The kids were not there. No one applauded. But something inside me loosened. The tight knot of resentment that had sat heavy in my chest for so long began to unravel, thread by fragile thread. Forgiveness did not mean I wanted her back. It did not erase what she had done or the consequences of my leaving. It simply meant I was tired of carrying her choices like they were mine. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at the table with the stack of photos she had given me months before. I spread them out carefully, the way you might lay out old letters. Here was Lily, missing teeth and grinning. Here was Max, in his superhero cape. Here was Anna, clutching that stuffed rabbit. I did not cry this time. I just looked, letting the memories surface without fighting them. When I was done, I placed the photos in a small wooden box and slid it onto a shelf. Not hidden, not displayed. Just there. A part of my story. In the quiet that followed, I realized something else. Walking away had not been about punishing them. It had been the only way I knew to stop punishing myself. I had left them with nothing of mine, no name on a birth certificate, no legal claim, no shared DNA. But that was never entirely true. They carried pieces of me still, not in their blood, but in their memories. In the way Lily might someday overcook pancakes for someone she loves. In the way Max might tighten a seatbelt 3 times before driving because that's what he saw me. In the way Anna might hear rain on a window and think of a man who once held her at 3 a.m., whispering that it was just the sky talking. Those pieces did not require my presence to exist. They did not require my return. Letting go, I realized, was not about forgetting. It was about accepting that some stories do not end with reunions or second. Some end quietly in a small apartment with a man sitting at a kitchen table, morning light spilling in as he finally sets down what he was never meant to carry alone. Outside, the city kept moving. Traffic murmured. Neighbors laughed in the hallway. Inside, I took a slow breath, wrapped my hands around a warm mug, and let the silence sit with me, not as an enemy this time, but as a companion. For the first time in a long time, the future did not feel like a punishment or it felt like an unwritten page. It felt like an unwritten page.